Hi, everybody, and welcome to Traveller Mayday, Mayday 2026. I'm your host, Frank Succardi from CyborgPrime Games, and today I'm chatting with my friend Josh Bell, creator of the TravellerMap online galactic map for Traveller. Welcome, Josh.
Hey Frank, good to be chatting with you again.
How you doing?
Doing pretty good.
Long time no see. It's been like what, a few days?
Yeah, Frank and I are lucky enough to play in a Traveler game about every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I really am fortunate to not be to break my forever GM role for a while, and I'm really enjoying playing with you guys. So, um, yeah, let's keep it rolling. Um, let's see. So, Josh, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your background, how you got started with Traveler, and what inspired you to create the Traveler map?
Sure. Well, I was super lucky to go to a school in the early 80s in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And the school was really close to a very, very good gaming store called the Sentry Box. It was walking distance from the school. And this was probably the biggest game store in Canada, Western Canada, maybe all of North America. I don't know what the stats were, but it was amazing. It had, that's where I would go on my lunch break is go up there and see what new things came in. And I remember seeing some of the GW's board games like Imperium and stuff up on the shelves and never grabbed those, but grabbed little black books. This was after my group of friends had moved on from D&D. And so picked up traveler supplements and remember picking up Secrets of the Ancients and digging through that and going, wow, this is what the big deal is. And also picking up some of the freebies they would give away, like posters of the Imperium, um, the big map of, or the big poster of charted space.
Spinward
um,
Marches, giant
and
map.
the giant hex map of the Spinward Marches actually ended up trading something to a friend to get their copy of that map. I didn't have the set that included it.
Oh, no.
Uh, it had the library data books and a copy of the Traveler book, the softcover one. That was the manual that I had. And played in a few games back then. And then, as one does, moved on to other things, shoved those all in a box, forgot about it. And I've told the story before, but many, many years later, I was a software engineer, um, and happened to stop by a half-price bookstore in the Seattle area. Um, and there was a copy of GURPS Traveller and picked it up and went, oh, I remember Traveller. This is so neat. And the really nice thing about the GURPS Traveller core rulebook was it recapped the rules for the game, but then also had, as little sidebars throughout the book, details about the setting. And I really love how that edition of Traveller mixed the rules with the setting and teaching you things with these little asides. And it also had a mock-up of a computer interface showing that map of charted space. And this was right about the time that Google Maps had just come out. This was 2005. And I'd done web stuff in the 90s and then had been working on desktop applications for a while and thought, oh, I should get back into doing stuff on the web, see what's the latest and greatest tech here. And so, oh, hey, I can build an electronic map. The existing maps online for Traveler, there were some of them, but you'd like click on a subsector and it would load, and then you'd click on a hex and it would load. If anyone remembers navigating in the real world using online maps before Google Maps. There were things called MapQuest. And it was the same thing. If you wanted to slide the map over, you'd click a little arrow and wait for the page to reload. Click another arrow, wait for the page to reload. That's what online traveler map tools were like at the time. And so, like, just for fun, I wrote up something that was like Google Maps, but for Traveler. And that was 2005. So it's now celebrated its 20th anniversary.
No,
It's
wow.
updates since then, but yeah.
How much initial data did it have? Like, how much did it represent? Did you just have the Spinward Marches, or like how big was that initial data set, or how did you decide what to put into it to start with?
Yeah, so that I will say I shamelessly took the other online collections of data and dumped them in. And so these were a couple of other sites. Burka had a site that's still alive. Um, it's called, his site's called the Zodani Base. And so it had a bunch of sectors, and lots of people had sites up. And there were archives, FTP sites, if anyone remembers those, a good way of sharing files back in the 90s and early 2000s. People
Hmm.
would have sites that had data files. And at the beginning, I was very indiscriminate. It's, oh, hey, here's a hole. What can I plug it with? Until I was like filling out the core sectors of the Imperium and the areas around it.
Hmm.
Um, and then immediately it turned into a matter of curation. How do I decide what to include? What year is this representing? And what happens if there's contradictions? And where did this data come from? And so then spent a bunch of time going back and documenting what the sources of the data were. And in many cases, it came back to sectors that the Digest Group folks, Joe Fugati and others, had generated, or that Mark Miller had originally generated. Mark Miller wrote code on the Apple II that would generate sectors, and that's what the original data files were for the Atlas of the Imperium,
Hmm.
that classic Traveller era book. And then those data files made their way to the Digest Group folks. They filled in some of the blanks when they were doing their grand tour adventures and publishing their Mega Traveler work. And those files all got shared online on, this was on like big dial-up systems. There was one called Genie, the General Electric Network for Information Exchange. And there was a Traveller forum on that. And so they uploaded files to that, and those had made it to the internet. So there's an awful lot of sort of data archaeology involved in understanding this.
Hmm.
And actually, Frank, a couple of minutes ago, we were talking about what are some things we should be talking about here. I want to go off the rails for a little bit and talk about a project that I forgot to mention to you.
Okay.
It fits in really nicely here. Okay, so this was like 2005 and later on when I'm putting all of this together for TravellerMap. So at that point, things in the 90s were ancient history. Things in the 80s, like these are just books. This isn't useful data. This is not something that'd be useful for putting TravellerMap together. Well, a few years ago, and this is a few years ago from today, so like 2020 something, Mark Miller sent me a package. And this package was a box containing a whole bunch of floppy disks. And if you remember floppy disks, there were the sort of biggish 5.25 inch disks and the smaller 3.5 inch disks. And these 5.25 inch disks, I'm looking through them. And some of them are Apple II disks. They're some of the Apple II disks that he used when he was creating those tools and writing the software that generated the Imperium.
Hmm.
And some of them were typesetting disks. And these are disks for a CompuGraphic MCS typesetting system. So this is, before desktop publishing, this is how you would actually construct pages and then send them to some specialized machine that would output them so you could then print them out, cut them up with paper, cut them up with scissors, paste them together so you could do photographs, so you could actually publish a book. And these were the typesetting disks for Classic Traveller and Mega Traveller. And mind blown, because they weren't useful to Mark anymore. And I don't know if they're useful to anybody right now because
Hmm.
we CR the original books. These aren't like disks full of files. This is before typesetting systems ran like even MS-DOS or anything like that. These are totally proprietary files. But I thought it was important to save the data, so I actually got in touch with a local university that has like an archiving program, and
Hmm.
they just completed doing data imaging of all of these old disks.
Oh, cool.
So again, not sure it'll ever be useful for anything, but if we ever have the need to go back and look at the original typesetting files for, book 12, Secret of the Ancients, or, the original library data supplements or
Hmm.
things like that, we have that data preserved.
That's cool.
Yeah, again, not sure it'll be useful for anything. There's, obviously we had the printed books,
Mm-hmm.
um, and OCR is pretty good at this point. And those old data files, we don't even know how to quite interpret them. You can look at them,
Mm-hmm.
you can tell the data is there. But that was a fun project to be involved in.
That,
Um,
yeah, that sounds fun. The Traveller Foundation, the Traveller Archive. That's
and then
cool.
what reminded me about this is I was looking through some of the later ones. So these are the smaller 3.5 inch discs. By this point, these are standard IBM or PC compatible or Macintosh discs. And I was poking around on one of them using an emulator. And one of them is a tool written in a system called HyperCard that was an
I
Apple
remember
tool
that.
in these
Mm-hmm.
early 90s. And I open it up and it says it's written by I think Joe Fugati, maybe Dave Nielsen, but I think Joe Fugati. And it basically asks, hey, what sector? And then you pick a file and it loads and renders a map of that sector. And when you close it, it zooms out and shows you all of charted space. And so this is from like 1992. So this is and I don't think this ever got published externally. I think this was used when the folks at Game Designers Workshop and Digest Group were just creating things for Mega Traveler, maybe
Mm-hmm.
any. Um, but this was like the spiritual ancestor of TravellerMap, and it was so cool
Mm-hmm.
to see.
Yeah, and
Um,
HyperCard's like the spiritual ancestor to like the web.
the web,
That's when
yeah,
we first started, we made hypercards were like these you could think of them like index cards with hyperlinks to other index cards.
yeah,
And so it made this like hyperlink document and because we
yeah,
really didn't have that on the internet yet.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Some cool archaeology. And again, I think the files there are all the ancestors of what ended up getting shared online on those old bulletin boards. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
think there's anything novel in the data there. But again, we've got it all archived. If any researchers in the future need it, we've preserved it. Not all
Oh,
the
that's
disks
cool.
we read because media does decay over time, which is why I thought it
Yeah.
was to image all the disks.
Mm-hmm.
So did what we could, which was easily 99% of the data on the disks.
Oh, cool. Nice, nice. Um, I have a bunch of 3.5 inch discs for my old Atari ST and Falcon, and some of them did degrade, and yeah, they won't boot anymore. But the majority of them are still alive, and I should sell that system and before it degrades much more. It's like not my first computer, but like my first I don't want to say like $1,000 adult computer. um, yeah. Anyway, all right, cool. So you built Traveler Map and found these, and then you found these archives and got all that stuff together. Um, what's life like now? Are you I understand that you're semi-retired and you've moved
Yeah,
back to Canada.
yeah. So that was the big news in since last year, which is
Mhm.
and plans were in the works, I think, when we talked last year. But I left my job that I'd been at for 13 years and sort of continuation of the work I'd been doing for many years before that. But had the opportunity to basically move from San Francisco back to Canada. We landed in Victoria on Vancouver Island. So we're looking at a map that's extreme Western Canada, just northwest of the Seattle area. And bought a house and am taking a break from working. We're very fortunate to be able to do that for a little bit and bought an older house and knowing that it was going to be a bunch of work and it's been a bunch of work and a lot of it was planning for the remodel that's now happening right now. So actually in
Mm.
the past month we've moved out again of that house that we moved into just about 7, 8 months earlier, so that the remodel can commence. It's a historic house. Well, it's old. And so it needs a fair bit of updating. Don't worry for history fans out there, we're not breaking down walls and making it open floor plan or anything like that. We're undoing some of the questionable decisions that were done in the 80s. But right now, a lot of the work that has to be done is the plumbing situation is not good. So right now the
Mm.
lawn is all ripped up while new water supply lines and new plumbing lines are put in. And some old nasty stuff is being taken out of the walls. And then we get to go back and put stuff back in and make it our home again. So
Are you upsetting the ghosts?
Uh, hopefully not. I've actually spent the last week, uh, since we were out of the house, I got into digging up history and learned the names of people that lived there or on the property. It's unclear if it's the same physical structure that was there the whole time, or if at some point there was a fire and part of it was lost or something. The records are sketchy, but we now know the names of the people that have lived there since the 1890s. And so we know the names of potential ghosts. Just found a
That's great.
picture of the person that built the house today.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh.
so, yeah, that was fun.
Hmm. You said you mentioned the other day that like the floor plans weren't lining up with the public records and
Yeah, it's very interesting. Again, it's you look at the current floor plan and you look at the what was on these fire insurance maps from like 1903. It's like half of it lines up, the other half doesn't. Weird. And then they're like, okay, maybe I'll find something if I dig in through the history. And fortunately, the um, Victoria, the University of Victoria, and the government here have done a lot of work in putting old archives online, so you can
hmm.
search newspapers. So I've been looking for, was the house ever empty for a year? And unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is before building permits were required. So I've got like year by year who was living there, and there aren't really big gaps. Like I have a couple theories, and so I'm looking for, is there evidence to validate or invalidate that theory? Um, and still looking. We're gonna have to dig into some archives that aren't digitized. We found a photograph of what we think is the house in 1903, but it's in the background of another house. It's a picture of a house in the foreground, and then if you look in the background and you know what you're looking at, you're like, that's our house. And but it's behind a tree, and it's like, does the roof line match? And it's this really low res photo. I'm like, okay. So when we get the original, which is in the city archives, maybe we'll be able to tell a little bit more.
Right, right. All right,
See.
cool.
So,
Uh, all right, cool. So so you're in the middle of remodeling this house. How much longer is it going to take oh, before it's all done and you can finally move in?
oh, well, move back in. Six
Oh, yeah,
months.
back in. Six
6 months.
months. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you
And
staying with friends or you just renting
uh,
another place or?
I'm renting a place nearby, so we're
Hmm.
within walking distance, so we
Oh,
can
okay.
pop by pretty easily and check in and see how things are going.
So you've probably paused your work on Traveler Map for a while.
Actually, sort of a bit of the reverse.
Oh,
In the lead up to this, the remodel, there's just so much going on. I kind of said, let me put the brakes on and not actually touch anything on Traveler Map for a while. Like if an emergency happens, jump in and kick it. But fortunately, even that hasn't needed much attention in the past year at all. So I really batched up a lot of the work. So if you sent me hey folks out there, if you'd sent me hey, can you add this sector? Or hey, here's a pull request, like a request to make changes to the code. Um, I was basically not doing anything with those for 6 months, maybe. Again, you were getting settled, moving in, and I really wanted to dedicate some time to it. Um, and so it wasn't actually until we got moved out, I think it was last week, maybe the last week or the week before, um, and life at home had settled down enough that I'm like, I'm going to spend today catching up and dive in. And yeah, it was uh, interesting because I hadn't thought about it really in detail for many, many months. And it's like, oh yeah, this is what I have to do. These are the magic incantations on the keyboard to make updates. Um, and also, I had it's built on an old technology stack. When I first built it, I was working at Microsoft, and so like let me use Microsoft technology to build this. So it's written as a C# server application, and which requires building the app on Windows. And my old Windows box didn't run anymore. It was this old little tiny appliance that I used only for updating the TravellerMap server
Mm.
code. And I have needed to update the server code in quite some time. Now I needed to do it. So someone else that we play Traveller with, he has an IT business, and he set me up with a virtual machine, and I was able to, spend the time, because whenever you're setting up a new computer, it's like, how do I do this again? What do I have to install? Ugh. Get that going, and so now I've got all of the pipeline ready for making updates to the server. Uh,
Fantastic.
yeah, and
Hmm.
there's Traveler Map, updating Traveler Map. There's sort of three pieces of it. There's updating the data, which I can do from any machine. I usually do it from like my Mac laptop, and it's just double check that it's going to work, push it to the server, hit the refresh button, make sure it worked. If it doesn't, figure out what went wrong, update it.
Hmm.
Um, and so I can do that anytime. There's the client code, the stuff that runs in the web browser. So that's what's the HTML, the JavaScript, the CSS. Also, I can do that on my MacBook. And again, get that working. I can test it locally, shove it up to the server, make sure nothing broke. Great, you can do that. There's just a tiny bit of server code, the stuff that
Hmm.
generates the image tiles and serves up the data. And that changes very infrequently. And so that requires me to jump onto a Windows machine,
Mm.
push some buttons to make an update. So, one of the requests, somebody said, hey, the data files for sectors don't include this little bit of data. Can you add that? And I'm like, sure. Once I've remembered how to do it and got all this stuff set up. But I'm set up to make those sorts of changes now. So thank you for your patience, everyone.
No, cool. Yes, and thank you to our mutual benefactor. He's also supplied me with a virtual Windows machine, so I can run our Champions VTT on there. So that was nice of him.
Mhm.
Um, Speaking of which, do you get a lot of support from like the community for this? I mean, I see online a lot of people saying they want to pitch in. I mean, our friend pitched in and provided this machine for you, but are other people, do they ever pitch in with resources or things for Traveler Map?
Yeah, yeah. It actually been an uptick in that recently, which has been pretty nice. Um, Obviously, most interaction I have with the community is people who say, "Hey, can you add? I've detailed a new sector. Can you add it in there?" Or, "Hey, here's a data glitch. Can you investigate it and make a change?" Um, or a little bug report. And
Hmm.
those are all welcome. But a couple of ways that people have been contributing recently. One is I stuck a donate button on the site. It's a little hard to find. If you go up to the little menu thing and go to the about, um, there's a link you can donate and just throw me a few bucks, and that just it goes through a site called Coffee, because the idea is hey, buy me a coffee.
Hmm.
Um, and the site is absolutely still free to use. This is really just encouraging me to keep going.
Hmm.
And there hasn't been a lot of promotion of that. It doesn't hit you in the face when you load up the page. But I really do appreciate the fact that some people have started giving some donations. That's pretty recent. So
Hmm.
I'm very happy. If you've donated, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah,
And,
that is a great resource, and Josh has been doing this for free on his own dime, paying for all the infrastructure and stuff all this time. So it'd be nice if you can, if it's in your means, and you've taken advantage, or even just think it's a cool idea, to give it your financial support and make sure it keeps going. What's the what are your future plans for that site?
um,
I
well,
mean, you're going to
okay,
eventually retire, right? And like fully
yeah,
retire, and
yeah.
how what are the plans for the Traveler map to continue in perpetuity?
Yeah. Let me actually just skip back for a second and say one other
Sure.
way that people have been contributing is they do
Mm-hmm.
occasionally send in additions for code.
Hmm.
And I've got one person who actually sent a bunch of submissions in recently. This person, don't know their full identity, just their handle, Byte Quiver
Mhm.
on GitHub. Um, they dug in to figure out why some things were maybe a little bit slower than they needed to be, and have done some digging and figured out some glitches with the code and things that the site's been running with the code for years unchanged, but they
Mhm.
found out, oh, if you make this little tweak, it'll be a little bit faster, or it won't be making these extra network requests. And
Mhm.
that was awesome. I mean, it took me a while to
Yeah.
stare at them and go, okay, this is correct. This part isn't correct. Let's iterate on this a bit more. And they
Mhm.
actually, another one, so the next time I get a chance to do a Traveller Map day, I'll be digging in and looking at their more recent updates. Um,
That's cool. So there's a GitHub where people can download the Traveler Map source code and evaluate it and
yep,
submit
yep, yep.
changes. That's cool.
Yeah, and so that's part of the legacy of like what's the future.
Mhm.
If I go away, um, the site is like fully documented. There's all the code is available. The data is up there. Other people have set up copies of the site that they can run locally,
Mhm.
um, and just as proof of concept. So it's all documented. As part of that, when getting set up to do development again, I had to go through the steps again and update them because the latest version of the tools is not necessarily what was there a few years ago,
Mhm.
but it's all still there. So I was able to build and run a local copy of the site to verify my changes before I pushed everything up. So that's all there. Um, there's no firm, here's what the future of the site looks like. I would love it if Mongoose got more involved in the site. Um, I think the folks at Mongoose use the site, love the site, tell people to use the site. They'll, but when a new book is coming out, they'll often say, "Hey, can you add this sector?" So Bella sent me some updates for the Jadani core route that I plunked in. Gosh, that must have been like almost 2 years ago
Mhm.
now, that have been sitting there. Now the book is finally out. I haven't seen the book, but hopefully everything lined up. I think the Rim expeditions, same sort of thing happened. Matt sent me some books or sent me some data files and said, "Hey, can you add these?" Um, and I may have some to-do items in my list for Mongoose in there. So anyway, they definitely link to the site, everything. Would love to get them involved in, maybe footing the bill for hosting it. Every once
Mhm.
in a while, there's the question of, can they host it on their server, on their infrastructure? And I say, well,
Mhm.
it's weird because it's not just a big WordPress site. It's an application running on some Microsoft tech. So here's the instructions for running it. Go run it. Once that's up and running, great, then we can point the domain at it. But step one
Mhm.
is follow the instructions. So until they do that, it's sort of stuck in this weird limbo. Another option would be rewrite it
Mhm.
on different tech, which is, it's code, it's engineering work. And again, I think the folks at Mongoose they're great at publishing and creating role-playing games. That's a very different industry than software, and
Mhm.
requires a different set of skills. And understanding the costs and risks and how to mitigate this and to build something that, I'm very lucky that I built an architecture for TravellerMap that's been pretty much stable and unchanged for 20 years. And that
Mhm.
was, I'm a software engineer. I know how to do these things. It's required a little bit of updating, but the basic, client server model and the API decisions that I made have been pretty solid.
Mhm.
Um, if you didn't know what you were doing, it'd be easy to build something that works great on some tech that goes obsolete in 6 months and breaks. And then do you rebuild it from scratch? And do you have the money for that? I don't know. So definitely would look towards Mongoose or look at Mongoose and say, hey, cool if you could do a little bit more here.
Mhm.
That's not to say we haven't chatted a bit, but they're busy. They've got their priorities. When I've talked to some other tech folks, it's turned into I've started thinking about what would proposals look like for doing some work on updating the site. And of
Mhm.
course, there's always the rebuild the whole thing from scratch on new tech. It's like, well, does that help people right away?
Right.
No. So I do have some ideas for some cool projects. that
Right. I guess the rub is that, most servers are web servers are Linux. There's a lot that are Microsoft servers.
yeah,
Um, Generally, though, on a web host, a lot of them you can choose whether you're running a Linux or a Windows server. So it shouldn't be a big deal to,
yeah,
move it
shouldn't
over
be,
to a Windows server.
yeah, shouldn't be a big deal.
Mm,
And then there's the question of like, what do we want to do with the site? And, you know, what's a priority for Mongoose? What's a priority for me? And most importantly, what do the users want?
hmm
So there's a couple of ideas that I've been batting around and working on proposals for. I'd love to hear feedback from the people that are watching this on what you think of some of these ideas. So one would be, do a bit of a technical refresh for users, um, and do that on the switch from server side rendering to client side rendering. If you use TravellerMap, then you probably know when you hit the site, the application loads. So the web page loads. You get the little banner at the beginning or at the bottom and little UI at the top, and then you wait staring at a checkerboard while all of the tiles load. And that's because the server is drawing all of those pictures. And that's because 20 years ago, when I first built the site, web browsers couldn't do that. Now, just have the web page itself do that. And well, what would it take to do that? Well, rewriting a bunch of the rendering code to run locally, figure out how to ship the data from the server to the client, not in the form of pictures, but have the client, the web page ask the server, hey, give me all of the data for the Imperium in the year 1105. And then that might be a little bit more upfront once, but then the web page would cache that and be able to load it instantly. And then now there'd be never any waiting for those little tiles to load. Is it a 5 minutes of work to implement this? No, this is weeks of work. Um,
Right.
but if we did it, it would be, much less work on the server side and a much better experience for users because now you're not waiting on the server to load things. Especially
hmm
good, say the servers are running on a different continent than you're in. It doesn't matter anymore. It's that one chunk of data coming down. And it's not a lot of data. If you look at the size of, if you go to like some social media site, the initial page load is bigger, way bigger than all of the
Right.
data.
Just the stylus sheet is bigger.
It's nuts. So that's not a concern. And we
Right.
can always work that. So that's one idea, which is the move all the rendering client side. And even if nothing else changes about it, the experience, it'd be faster. It'd make maintaining the server easier. And if it's just data files, they don't even need to be living on the Microsoft server that's being an application as well. They could be living on any cloud provider. They can be coming out of a CDN. So suddenly
hmm
you've solved a bunch of problems. Um, Now, when you update those data files, there might be a little more work, but that's easy. And
hmm
just how do you publish these things? Um, so that's one piece. Um, but then if you think about that, that opens up a handful of other things. Some follow-on projects might be, well, once the data is all the images are being, the map is being drawn locally, now you can start doing some really fun things. Like if you can
Graphics
render
variations,
graphics,
like graphics packs.
yeah, if you can start running it 30 frames per second, buttery smooth. You can imagine those sort of like 3D effects. Kind of weird because the
hmm
Traveller universe is 2D, but zoom out to see the whole galaxy, zoom in to see an individual planet, watch that planet
hmm
spin. Now that's a lot more possible because it's
hmm
not trying to figure out what happens on the server. How does the web page render it?
Right.
Pages can do this sort of thing.
Sure. But you know what? The existing like UI is very useful. It's very utilitarian. It's super easy to pick up and learn. I
Mhm.
mean, that program has so many cool features. Like the jump routes, the being able to like zoom down to a fractal image of the planet. All these things brought in, I guess, through APIs of different things, um but man, it's such a useful and great program, and being able to like switch between the different styles of maps and it's just it's a really good program. Kudos to you and everybody who pitched in to make it like that. How do you what is I gonna? What's the number one like biggest request that you get? Like or maybe the top three. Do you have some
Yeah.
major requests that people ask for, with regard to Traveler Map?
Yeah. I think that the number one is how do I do my own universe? Because the site is really geared around the universe of the Third Imperium, charted
Hmm.
space. And you load the site, that's what you see. And it's there are some variations. Like you can jump to different timelines and the data there sort of sketchy. And that's mostly because uh, that's what's been published is 1105. That's what we have focused on. That's what Mongoose is focused on. Um, People can submit their private areas, and I usually just treat those as like it's an island universe and just shove it far away, as I call it. Um, just because having additional UI to pick from a different set of universes
Hmm.
can be extra confusing for people. Timelines are
Sure.
confusing enough, and now you throw another
Hmm.
dimension in. So people ask, how can I do my own universe? I'm a GM, I've built my own sectors. How can I do this? And right now the answer is you can create posters. You can use the tools to create posters and then you're kind of on your own because running your own copy of Traveler Map is too hard. So I think that's the number one request. Um, but neat thing is when we were talking a minute ago about well, what if the whole universe is just a file that gets downloaded so that the web page can render it and it never has to go ask the server for more data, questions about how search works and everything like that. But again, it can be done locally. Well, if the universe is just a data file, then can we let referees create their own data files and just share them? Yeah. So you can imagine that, when you load Traveler Map, by default, it's grabbing the official 1105 Third Imperium data file. And there's some UI for picking others, but then it lets you add your own. And if we built tools so that a referee could create their own universe, stick it in a zip file and stick it on a server or just email it or use a VTT, share it with their players, and their players can just drop it on Traveler Map and it just gets added for those players, then suddenly I'm not a bottleneck for any of this.
Right.
People create their tools, they can share them, da da da. So that's one of the things that I'm excited about of potentially doing let's rework how the site works.
Hmm.
It just becomes it's almost like instead of it being you can imagine a music player that plays MP3 files. This would be Traveler Map. It plays Traveler Map files, and
Hmm.
people can share these files. Yeah, so interesting idea.
Hmm.
There might be other ways, better ways to do it. But that's my current, like, how would we do this in a sort of very decentralized way? And let people address that limitation, which is right now the site has its one little universe. And if you want a different universe, you're on your own. Like, or
Hmm.
you build something for Cepheus Engine.
Hmm.
How do you let people play in that and share in it? So I think that's probably by far the number one request is how can I have my own sectors? Um, it's still kind of challenging to create sectors. There are tools. Again, if you have a data file, create it as a text file or as a spreadsheet, you can use the tools for um, uh, creating posters, creating borders, and things like that. There's a lot more that could be done there. Um, I think that's some ways orthogonal. Like somebody else could go and build that now. It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be tied to Traveler Map.
Hmm.
Um, but that you can imagine that, hey, if we create this, here's how you package up an entire universe. Then anybody could work on a tool that's like helps refs create that so that they can be shared. So
Yeah. Cool.
yeah,
Those are
I
all
think
great ideas.
yeah,
Hmm. Being able to like a lot of people, there's programs out there like World Anvil where GMs can like fill out information about the lands and the people and the religions and the different aspects of their game, and then they can share it with their players. And something like this could carry over to Traveler Map, where, like you say, you have your private, you have like a snapshot of like the Traveler canon map maybe, and then yours added onto it, and you can forward that to players, and they could tap into that as well. And then you have your private map of your own Traveler universe, which a lot of people do. They're on the fringes, or they make their own universe. They don't want the government meddling, so they're kind of keep the empire far away, or make it so that it would take a long time for them to respond.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Or,
So, and one of
or,
the fun things of Traveler is making, it's got all these like solo mini games built in, like the Traveler character creation, but also the world creation and map creation.
yeah,
Um, those are just great games on their own, and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you'll love the third Imperium, but you've designed your own Foreven sector,
hmm
which, everyone's encouraged to do. How do you
right.
plug that in? I would consider that sort of a variation of the request, but people are like, how can I show my own data here? And
hmm
again, this all sort of ties back to can we rethink what it means to have the data set for the site?
Right, because right now, people have, if they submit their subsectors, some person has to review it and add it into the map, right?
Right,
But if
right.
if it was done on the user side and nobody needed to, like you say, no
Yep,
bottleneck that way.
yep.
hmm
There are some developers out there who've sort of hacked this together in some way, and like they've said, "Hey, can you make it so that I can generate a sector image that doesn't have the borders around it, and that's actually got the jagged hex edges and is transparent around the side, around the edges, so that I can overlay it?" It's like, yes, I can do that. Yes, I've done that. I feel your pain. You should be dealing with this, but it requires stepping back and thinking about how should we rethink the whole model of the site again without
hmm
making it harder for most users and most referees.
Right, right. No, I love it. It's got a great interface, and it's just great program. It's cool to be able to see the things that kind of laid out that you see I mean, in the books, it's just a stack of numbers. But when you see it kind of laid out, and you can go, oh, look, there's the trade routes, and here's the borders of the territories, and oh, look, there's a weird rift over here. You're going to need like a high jump engine to like completely jump it, you know, um, I don't know, or go around it. I mean, it adds a whole other mm, like spacescape landscape to the game, and
Yep.
I love things that help you visualize, or yeah, things that are hard to imagine. So I think that does a great job of doing that. um,
Thank
so
you.
again, congratulations. That's a well built, and well and very like useful and practical program.
I would say a lot
um
of a lot of the work that goes into it is how to add things without breaking the usability of it.
Right. Yeah. Like when you have something new, where do you put it? How do you keep things organized? Stuff that you didn't plan on adding in you have to plan for it to be extensible, and then like put in hooks for that, and it's not, you can't always foresee what you're going to need hooks for in the future,
Yeah,
so, and then once you put them in, they might have side effects with other things. It could be a problem,
yeah.
but, it sounds like you've got it all documented and stuff, so you can come back to it pretty much, and
Well,
with
that's
a
the
little bit
theory.
of review, get back in the flow.
Yeah, yeah.
hmm So what do you think about, let's kind of change topics to, well, not change topics, but I'm just wondering, the Traveler fifth edition conversion rules are coming out, and just wondering, do you have any opinion about that? One way or another. Travelers had multiple like side editions, GURPS Traveler, T20 Traveler. In my opinion, this is just another one of those. But how do you feel about it?
Exactly. Like I've been around since Classic Traveler, and I think I missed. I'd fallen out of following the day-to-day of Traveler before Mega Traveler came out.
hmm
And so when I sort of fell back into it, it was fun to dig into the history and go, oh, there's been Mega Travelers, there's been TNE, there's been T4, there's been at that point it was GURPS and I think the a Hero
Mm-hmm.
uh, and T5 hadn't come out at all, or Mark was just starting to think about it. Um, and that was before Mongoose had picked up the license. It was like just before Mongoose had picked up the license. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm used to, oh, and T20, I think, yeah, T20 was around. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to there being a gazillion different editions of Traveller. And um, it's great that people can pick and choose the set of rules that work for you. One of the things in the game that we're playing together is our ref has experience points. And of course, that my Traveller didn't have that. And so actually
Mm-hmm.
the first several sessions when we were playing, at the end of the session, the ref would say, everybody take an experience point. And I went, ha ha ha, what a cute joke.
And you weren't taking him seriously. You got
Taken
behind on
seriously, but
tracking him.
that's his way, that wasn't a thing in any version of Traveller that I had played back in the 80s. So I assumed he was joking, and it was his hot way of saying, ha ha, everyone, great session, move on. And so it wasn't until quite a few weeks in that I'm like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be jotting these down. I can use these for things. What? So, the more editions, the merrier. The more different styles of play, the merrier.
Mm-hmm.
You may not be shocked to hear that I'm a big fan of the setting. Um, and yes, there's infinite parallel timelines, infinite variations. I'm glad pop culture is sort of caught up with the notion that there doesn't just have to be one true timeline and a gazillion canon wars about what's real, what's not.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Even in the most recent Muppet special, there was a joke about that Muppet's not canon. So all these things that we used to take way too seriously,
Mm-hmm.
to yeah, no, we can accept that there's different versions of reality, different versions of the setting. I like to pretend that there's, all we're doing is we're looking at, poor, unreliable narrations through smoky, clouded glass at some platonic ideal traveler universe in M1105 with a few constants like jump takes a week and scout ships are always cramped and smelly and
Mm-hmm.
uh,
But we're
yeah,
not playing in the Imperium, so we're kind of we're not playing in a standard setting, I suppose.
right,
But
no.
I'm enjoying it, and I think Jeremy's doing a good job, and I hope he doesn't kill my character. And next time I hide under the table, I hope nobody finds me.
Your character could get killed by any of the other characters if you keep making
Yeah,
it.
he might get killed by one of the other characters before an enemy manages to get him. I'm having
Yeah,
fun,
so,
and
so
I'm hoping he's not too annoying.
delightful, annoying enough.
That's what I'm trying to balance, like annoying with endearing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, because my concept was kind of like Dr. Smith, an unholy combination of Dr. Smith and Dr. McKay from Atlantis. They're like Dr. McKay, especially, he's somebody you would never choose first, like for your away team. But on the other hand, you would always choose him first because he's brilliant, like he's a genius, and he always comes up with some sort of scientificating way to solve the problem and save everybody's ass at the last minute.
Yeah.
But even though they don't like, he's very like not crass, but like he's abrasive and very narcissistic. So I was like, oh, that sounds like a fun character. He kind of plays but doesn't play along, or does his wants to do his own stubborn thing. And anyway, I'm having fun, but I'm not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. Tell us about your character.
Oh yeah, so I play a Vargur uh, scout. Um, so likes exploring space. I know that doesn't seem like too much of a stretch. But with a few layers in there. Was raised in the Imperium, so he's got a bit of a weird relationship with his own species. Um, Although the Spinward Marches area of the Imperium is pretty egalitarian, there's still some bit of odd vibes going on in there. Um, Very interested to learn about the history of the species. Like, there's one of the undercurrents in Traveller among the Vargur is there's the whole Church of the Chosen Ones. Are the Vargur the true descendants of the ancients? Are they the ones that were chosen to be special? And we've encountered a few things along the way that get my character Ack thinking along those lines. Doesn't come out a lot, but Ack is also, very interested in exploring. When we get word of strange stuff happening in space, Ack wants to drag everybody along there. Um, and
We've had some great adventures. Uh, Josh's character Ack is famous for bending the ship, but
uh,
he saved our butts,
yeah,
but bent the ship, and we had to
gone through a
basically.
thousand cruise ships.
We're on our what, third or fourth ship now?
Yeah, most of which not my fault.
Right.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
keep
For the
getting
record, every crash landing has been survived.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. We tend to end up working for people who then turn on us.
Hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
we're very
well,
gullible or very like we have poor judges of character. I don't know. Um, yeah, I don't know. We keep getting into trouble.
yeah,
We've been trying to like get to this place for a year now. We're still not there. I mean,
yeah,
like for a year of like real time, but we're
yeah,
making our way there. We're lost in
yeah,
space at the moment.
yeah. We're close. Was a big misjump.
Hmm.
Um, wasn't the worst possible. Hey, everyone survived.
Right,
Uh,
right. And we just have a lot of backtracking to do. But yeah, no, I'm having fun at that. If you could build another app for Traveler, what would it be?
ooh, that's a good one. Um, I mean, honestly, the dream one is not a different app. It's kind of what you were saying, visualize the Traveler universe. I really want that. You're just zooming out and seeing the entire Traveler galaxy and zooming all the way into individual planets. Um, in amazing whiz bang 3D buttery
Hmm.
space. The sort of immersive visualization of the universe would be really cool. Is it useful at all? No. Um,
Right.
but it's cool. But that's also not something separate. Um, Visualizations of planets is sort of part of that, which
Hmm.
TravellerMap has not tried to do. The site links to Jonathan Sherlock's Traveller Worlds site, which will generate on the fly worlds. So it'll take a UWP and roll the dice and generate a world map, which is pretty cool.
Hmm.
And then we have world maps for some canonical places. So 3D visualizations of, or even 2D visualizations of the star systems and the planets would be fun.
Hmm.
Um, I don't want that to become, here's the official Traveler universe is all these randomly generated systems and worlds, just because they end up looking samey over time. If
Hmm.
you forget to put in a rule about, well, planets can do this, then you end up with no system that looks like that. And
Hmm.
as we're learning, as we learn about um, real exoplanets, you know, our system is not at all typical. But many systems are not at all typical. All the systems are just crazy pants out
Hmm.
there. And so if we try to
It's like
encode,
somebody rolled them up randomly.
it's like someone rolled them up randomly, but not using rules that humans came up with. And if you follow the rules for generating star systems that Mark and folks came up with in the 80s, yeah, you get some interesting systems, but the real universe is way wackier.
Hmm.
And so you don't want to constrain that. So, but that's another thing that people kind of want and have asked for, and I'd love to see. Jonathan Sherlock and I came up with it's actually adapted from some of the Traveller 4 stuff, just a one-dimensional view of star systems. Like it sticks the
Hmm.
star on the left and the planets off to the right.
Right.
It's a very, very information dense way of representing systems,
Hmm.
uh, much like an infographic. And like I adore some of the information presentation that went into Traveller, which is like why you get the hex map with a parsec that has all of these symbols in it, because at a glance, you can look at it and know, yes, I can refuel there. I can do wilderness refueling there. No, that's
Hmm.
not a good place to go because it's a red zone.
Right.
So that'll
There's
because
a military base there. Maybe we should avoid it or whatever.
yeah,
Maybe
depending
we
on who
should go there.
you
We need help, or whatever.
are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's on a jump route, so they're going to have the latest news. So
Mm-hmm.
all of that is very well presented.
Mm-hmm.
And so we tried to come up with a what's a compromise like that for a star system, but it is very, very dry. And when you look at some of the ways that, planetary systems were presented in the Mega Traveler thing, the Digest Group folks would have these glorious overhead maps of where all the planets are at a particular time in for a particular adventure. I think that's players and refs would love that a lot
Mm-hmm.
more. And so building out that aspect of it, I don't know if that's Traveler Map, if that's something else, that'd be a fun thing to explore. Um, I mean, tools to help people build their little their private universes
Mm-hmm.
would also be cool. It doesn't have to be me. So I'd love to see someone else take that and run with it. I mean, basically
Mm-hmm.
just in a spreadsheet and you can use Traveler Map.
Right.
But that would be an interesting thing to run with. Um, I don't know, there's
Yeah.
some fun things
Yeah,
to
what you were just talking about had me thinking, I like space conquest games like Endless Space or Stellaris, and some of those have some really cool interfaces that show the planets and like the layout of the planets and within the solar system, and you can zoom into them, and they have, different, the planets are, this one's good for trade, this one's good for producing resources, whatever. And then they have this all broken down. I tried to make something like that for Traveller. Um, my website, there's a planet called Thalaxis. You can see it in the sidebar. But I wanted to make like I made a whole bunch of all right, so I have like a sector, but my players play in a subsector. For each of the 26 inhabited systems, I made like a interface card that's like a library interface about that system, and it's got a little picture of the planet, the diameter, all the whole UWP broken out, but in English so that people can understand, and with meters and like an infographic, and people can look at that and like it's a lot easier for the average player to look at something like that and be able to understand what's going on instead of like 17394-2, um
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because
And
even after all these years it's hard to keep track of like which digit the 8 digits are. It takes some memorization, and if you're just playing and you're not like creating worlds and stuff, you don't have enough practice to decipher all the world codes. So something that kind of spells it out for you and what do I want to say, like decodes it and presents it in a interface, is something that I found useful. And I think if they could do something like that, like you say, for Traveller Map, once things start rendering client side, then you could just slurp up that data and then have an interface similar to
yeah,
Endless
yeah,
Space or one of these space conquest games where you can get the detail for the solar system and then get detail for each planet. Um,
yeah.
and
I
it
mean,
just
there's
makes it that much more realistic, I guess.
yeah, yeah. There's part of that today, and that may be something that people aren't as familiar with. But if you click on a world in Traveler Map, it brings up a little information box on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Expand that or hit the print button there. It will give you basically a printable web page.
Mm-hmm.
So you can print a PDF or just print it. But it does
Right.
show here's a picture of the planet. Here's the UWP broken out.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what all those weird fields mean, including all the weird Traveler 5 fields.
Mm-hmm.
It probably doesn't go as far. And so that'd be the thing is what do players need? What do referees need? Another feature request that people have made is, can I take notes? Can I like add a note to a system? It's like, oh,
Oh yeah, that could be
it's actually
handy.
pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we stick that in? And are people going to be able to find it? Um, so,
Hmm.
um, yeah. Um, Yeah, it all comes back to what's going to be useful for the players and the referees, and
Mm-hmm.
not just I've made this because it looks really cool.
Right, right. So what are your plans over the next year between now and next May Day?
Um, well, so we're remodeling the house, so a lot of time is going to be sunk into real world projects because we've got contractors doing the bulk of the work, but there's a bunch of things that we're going to also be doing around the house, some mosaic tile work and stripping some lots and lots of paint and other stuff off the exterior. So that's going to be a lot of time. It's especially once the rainy season here ends, which should be actually in the next few weeks. The weather should turn around. It'd actually be nice to be doing projects outside.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to consume a lot of my time. And then, yeah, then on the traveler front, again, I've got ideas, and the question is, are people excited about these? Are they worth doing? And how should I be spending my time? As we started off the conversation, the big change for me is I'm not working for a big company anymore. I'm off on my own, and so I instead of it being necessarily something I do to just relax, oh, let me put real work aside and do some travel work for fun. Now I'm more choosy about how much time I'm gonna spend on this.
Mm-hmm.
Are people really going to use this? Is it something that if I build it, it's going to be around for several years and not going to be replaced by some other project? So, really want to hear from folks about, what do you want to see? What should I be spending my time on? Um, yeah, because I also, want to get it to the point where, I mean, hopefully it already is at the point where if I go away, the site can survive. But what else is needed there?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how can I get other people more involved in running it, in updating it, removing me as a bottleneck.
Right.
I want to hear from people, ideas, support, things like that.
And how do people submit their suggestions to you? There's a link on the traveler map to
There's a
your
link on the
email or
site.
something?
Yeah, it basically email. Yeah, if you go to the site, there's a little three dash menu. And then it's got a bunch of tabs under there. The question mark tab under there has links to about the site, how it works. Here are the credits. That's where the donate link is. Donations always appreciated. And but in there is how to submit data.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it's email. And it's, think about what are you submitting? Are you submitting your own completely separate universe and you just want it up there because we haven't done the whiz bang thing of anybody can just share their data files peer to peer? Or are you trying to make it part of the official Traveller universe and what to think about for those?
All
So
right.
yeah, hopefully that does make sense. And it lists my
Yeah.
email. So basically it
All right.
boils down to
So if people
email.
have suggestions, that's the way to go through
Yeah,
travelermap.com, right?
yeah, that's the way to go. Yeah. If you're interested in contributing on the code side, there's also the link to GitHub, which is a place where people can collaborate on code. But I'm guessing the people that are interested in contributing code are already aware of that.
Right.
Um, yeah. Data submissions can also be made that way, but it is pretty technical. So
Mm.
yeah, if you're not already familiar with using GitHub, then yeah, just email.
Mm. All right, cool. All right, I think we've covered all the questions I had. Did you have anything else you wanted to touch on or talk about before we come to the end of our interview?
Um, I think that's it. I didn't forget anything from the checklist we went over at the beginning.
Looks like we
I'm
touched over everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I still really love the Traveler universe. I've just been trying to batch up the work on it to be more rigorous about, how am I spending my time on this? How long do these things take? What do I need to know so I can update documentation and make sure that others can follow it? Um, and yeah, so feedback from others about updates, priorities, let
They're
me
looking
know.
for you're just looking for any kind of volunteers, people who can help edit the manual or
I mean,
optimize
feedback
code
like that
or
is feedback like that is great.
Mhm.
It's not going to be easy if you're not already familiar with hardcore hacking JavaScript. It's going to be difficult to contribute. So I wouldn't say
Mhm.
get started there.
Right.
Um, yeah, let Mongoose know. Like,
Mhm.
if this is valuable to you, if Traveler Map is valuable, let Mongoose know. Hey, you love Traveler Map, but you wish it was, faster, better, could
Mhm.
support these other features. You can tell me I've some amount of time. If this ends up being a priority for Mongoose, because all of you all out there let them know it's important. Hey, that's awesome.
Right. Yeah. Good idea. All right. Cool. Well, I guess then we've come to the end of our interview. I've been speaking today with Josh Bell, creator of TravellerMap. Thanks again, Josh.
Take care, everyone.
And thank you, fellow travelers. Until next time, happy traveling. To explore TravellerMap by Josh Bell, scan the QR code, use the link on screen, or check the description below. If you enjoyed this interview, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss future episodes. And I'd love to hear from you. What's the farthest you've traveled from your homeworld? Let me know in the comments. A quick thank you to my patrons. Your support helps make events like Mayday and interviews like this possible. If you'd like to support the channel and get behind-the-scenes access, early content, and more, you can join us on Patreon. And to everyone already supporting, thank you. I truly appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Check out one of these videos next. Until next time, see you at the astrogation console.